one of the one of the arguments I tried to make in my last dissertation concerning free will was it was a consciousness argument. It was basically because I think people feel they have agency over their actions, but I think it's fairly easy to, like you say, pierce the veil of people's sense of urgency over their thoughts. Because I think with some, like a very small amount of introspection, you can realize that the thoughts that appear in your consciousness are just doing that. They're appearing. Like you don't control the next thought. So I suppose that was one of my big arguments, was to say, if we can't control the next thought that enters our brain, how can we ever say that we control the action that we do with that thought?
Yeah.
I've spoke at like one of the previous episodes, I spoke with a neuroscientist, and he said, yeah, you might not have any control over the thought itself, but you can control what you do with the thought. So that, like, your past and all these events can lead you to, without any control from you, to have a thought, but you ultimately have some form of control over what you do with the thought. So you could have a thought of, say, I'm like a horrible thought of, I'm going to kill that person, but you have the choice and you have the ability to say, I'm not going to do that, and then move on with your day. Whereas someone might not do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things one could say here. I mean, first of all, on the you could control what you do with your thoughts idea, I think the question would be what type of control you're positing there, right? Like a compatibilist would say, you don't need to control your thoughts to have free will per se. You don't have to like voluntarily be able to bring them about. That your actions just have to follow in a certain kind of way from those internal psychological states. They have to follow in a kind of causal way. They have to be responsive to reasons. They have to be caused by motivational states that you yourself would approve of. They have different kinds of conditions that would be required. And they say that that kind of control is sufficient for free will. A libertarian might say, you have a different type of control, a kind of control where you could intervene and do something that's not completely causally determined by those motivational states. I think that the libertarian account is a much more difficult account, and I think it requires a kind of set of metaphysical commitments that would be easily challenged. I think the harder kind of view to dispel is the compatibilist view. And so I think the arguments against compatibilism are a little bit more difficult to give, but I think that there are reasons for rejecting this kind of picture. The most obvious one to me would be to think about a case where the agent is their actions are caused by internal psychological states that themselves are manipulated by some external agent. So let's think of a case where some team of neuroscientists has some ability to control my brain directly through some external manipulator. Let's say there's some kind of device in my brain that I'm not aware of, and they could cause in me various wants and desires and beliefs and motivational states. So they could cause in me the desire for a cup of coffee, the belief that we have coffee available in the kitchen. They could cause in me certain kind of motivational preferences. They could cause in me the higher order approval of giving in to my desire for coffee, all of that. And let's say I make myself a cup of coffee. People tend to have the intuition that this person is not doing so freely because their actions are the result from some external manipulator. Yet they satisfy all the compatibilist conditions on free will. And then the argument against compatibilism would proceed by giving you maybe a set of cases where each is a little bit more, a little bit different in its description of the kind of manipulation that's involved. But eventually you would get to a case of natural determinism. And in the case of natural determinism, you're no more in control of your internal psychological states, your desires, your preference for coffee, your belief that there's coffee in the kitchen. Those themselves would be caused by factors beyond your control. And the argument is essentially, if we're not free and morally responsible in the manipulation case, and there's no philosophically relevant difference between the manipulation case and the case of natural determinism, we should conclude that we're no more free in the case of natural determinism. And so the burden would be on the compatibilist to explain why there's this relevant difference between a case of where our eternal psychological states are caused by some external manipulator and when they're caused by some external events beyond our control, like, you know, the laws of nature, antecedent upbringing, brain chemistry. It doesn't matter. If they're beyond our control, they're beyond our control. And the compatibilist has to give an account of how our actions can be caused by factors beyond our control and yet we still be free.